Greetings, gamers! It is I, Gamer Monster, and today we're going to take another look at SINoALICE. The game has been out for a little over a month now, and it figured it was time to kind of take a second look and see where the game stands. So what's the verdict? Well, kind of mixed. Have you ever had one of those games where if you step back and kind of objectively look at it, you realize that there's nothing really special about it? It may not even be all that good, and yet for some reason you keep coming back, you keep playing. Well, SINoALICE has been one of those games for me. I have been playing since launch, albeit fairly casually. I haven't even finished my daily quests every single day, but I have been logging on every day at the same time. So what exactly is it about this game? Well, let's start with the positives. There's two main things that I think really going for this game, possibly three depending what kind of player you are. The first one is the co-op. This kind of jump in and out style of co-op play is really cool. Yeah, sure. In the end, it kind of, another player kind of is not much different than the AI companions that get thrown into your team as you play stages. But it's still, the concept is just really cool. I like the idea of jumping in and being able to help out people. And heck, having people jump into my stages and help me out. Every time I see that little blood-colored ball pop up, I'm like, oh, cool. This is another real person. And that's really cool. It really kind of beats a lot of the lobby systems that are in other games. Especially since no worries about getting kicked out of parties or anything like that, just because you're not playing with the most uber unit ever created. The second thing that I find to be particularly of note, and this is probably what really keeps me coming back, it's the game's style. I'm not usually much of one for storybook type of settings. Sure, I like a good fairy tale and stuff, especially if it gets Disneyfied or something like that, but as a general rule, I prefer my fantasy to be a little more Tolkien-esque, we shall say. However, taking that kind of gothic horror spin on the storybooks, the fairy tales, I find very appealing. The whole kind of just world and how everything looks, somewhat creepy, but not too far gone. Dark, but still recognizable. All those kind of elements just kind of mixed together to make a very appealing package aesthetically. And I think that's really what keeps drawing me back in, because I want to experience more of that. I like getting the different character classes and seeing how they're portrayed, the artwork for them and using them, and that's pretty cool. And also, the third thing that this game really has going for it, but is more dependent on what type of player you are, is the Coliseum. For somebody like me who's not much into PvP, the Coliseum is more of a burden than anything else, because having to log into the game at a very specific time in order to participate just to get a couple of rewards is very annoying. I can't tell you how many days have gone where I've looked at my watch and it's, it's 10:30 or 10:40. I've missed my window. I can't do the Coliseum today. However, if you are the type of player who one, likes PvP, and two, likes playing PvP with your buddies, your guildmates, then I could see how the Coliseum can be very appealing. And in fact, I think the combat, which is actually what we're going to get into next, works the best in Coliseum. Speaking of the combat, this is where we start getting into the negatives. Combat's just really not all that great, to be perfectly honest. It's not awful. And in fact, it has grown on me a little bit since launch. When the game first came out, I was like, I had made sure everything was on auto as much as absolutely possible because I wanted to avoid having to play the combat. I disliked it that much. But as time has gone on, I don't dislike it anymore, but I don't like it either. It's just, there's nothing really to it. You just kind of tapping a couple of buttons and everything. Also, the way it flows is very off. In fact, when I'm actually paying attention to it and everything, I've actually seen how life bars go up and down even before the damage or healing numbers pop up. And it can get kind of locked when somebody's inputted a command, but it hasn't been executed, but nobody else can really do anything because the monster's already dead, but you can't actually see it's dead, and it's very awkward. It doesn't flow very well. And I think that's actually its biggest detriment right there. But combat's not the only thing that's not good in this game. Because the other thing is the summoning. If we'll just take a quick look at the Grimoires here. We'll just use the banner one here as an example. And we take a look at the appearance rates. As you can see here, this game has a 3% chance for the highest rarity SRs. That's kind of standard in the industry, even though I think it's way too low. More games should up that percentage because they act like it would be something awful if people actually got what they want. And who knows, maybe even they would even want to spend some money so that they can continue getting things that they want. But instead, most companies just choose to shaft their players over and over again. But I digress. This game has the 3% for the SR. But that's not the worst of it. Because this game is a weapon gacha with the classes thrown in on top of it, it's actually much worse. Because that SR percentage right there is just for a weapon. And more often than not, you're just going to get an SR weapon. And don't get me wrong, SR weapons are good to have. You do want them because they are more powerful. But let's be honest here. What we're really wanting are the characters. And this is where we get to see how the character rates, the classes, they're awful. They're absolutely awful. Even the rate-up ones are not all that great, but look at the rest of them. 0.019% chance of getting them? That's insane. What it really boils down to is most of the time you pull, you get nothing. You don't get anything that you want. Now, I've gotten pretty darn lucky, and I've actually pulled a couple of classes. I mean, as you can see on my home screen, there's A2 sitting for me right there, but I've also pulled the Minstrel Little Mermaid, and I had 2 classes to start with from my initial rerolls. So, in addition to that, I've gotten several of the S ones, which are obviously easier to get. But still, in the end, games really need to ease up on their gachas and let people enjoy their games. But once again, I say I digress. Let's continue on. Because now we get to not really a positive and not really a negative. It kind of sits in between. And that's the story. I originally had recorded this video about a week and a half ago, only to realize that I had made the super noob mistake of not having the mic turned on. So I had to re-record it when I had a chance. And then, of course, life hit me. We have baby monsters in the house and had to move and all that kind of stuff. And so I didn't have a chance to make this video again until now. In a way, that's kind of a good thing, because when I first made this video, I basically panned the story left and right. I thought it was awful, laughably awful. Since then, I've played more of it, I've read it, and I've started to kind of see where they're going with it. Now, I still think much of the execution of the story is really, really bad. There's been plenty of times when I'll be reading along and all of a sudden one of the characters will do something and I'll be like, what? What? That doesn't even make sense. A great example of this, and of course, I'm going to be talking story points, so if you haven't read any of it, you care about story, spoilers right here. But in any case, Little Mermaid. In her story, it starts off talking about, sadness and how sadness can have a certain beauty to it. And then, of course, because it's a dark game and everything, it kind of twists it so that the Little Mermaid is like, yes, I want more sadness, so there's more beauty. Okay, I get that, and that's kind of an interesting little take. But then there's one point where the story talks about how she's fighting monsters and she just stabs one and goes, now do you feel sorry? Now do you feel sorrow, sad, and all that kind of stuff? And I'm like, what? No, it doesn't feel anything. Why? Because you killed it. Or how another great example of stuff kind of gone wrong was Gretel's story. It starts off real creepy with this girl who killed her brother, but somehow snapped, and now she's talking to him even though he's dead, and she doesn't believe that he's gone, and I'm like, okay, this actually kind of makes sense. It's a tragic character who has just flipped her lid and gone off the deep end. And yes, she did something horrible, but she's like insane, so you could kind of understand. But then about halfway through, all of a sudden the writers were like, this is not dark enough. How can we make this darker? I know, cannibalism. And it was just came out of nowhere. And she starts talking about wanting to eat her brother. And I'm like, okay, that's just too far. You completely lost me. Alice sometimes sounds like a 90s goth poser girl trying to write bad poetry. But at the heart of the story, as I said, as I've kind of read more of it, I've kind of understood a little bit more where they're going. This whole idea that they're really trying to explore the negative, the evil impulses, the darkness inside of us. I have just found that when dealing with subjects like that, subtlety is much more effective than extremes. A great example is Cinderella's story. Cinderella is a character that basically got dumped on over and over again in her life. And now imagine if the prince himself also dumped on her. Eventually she just has enough, and she's just like, I don't care anymore. I just don't care anymore. And she goes off and does her own thing. And you can see how somebody could come to that and basically become depraved because of what they went through. But they don't stop at that. Instead, she ends up coming across like some B-movie supervillain cackling and gloating over how evil they are. Maybe it's just the localization, the translation, or maybe it's the presentation on how they're just kind of giving you little snippets of stories in between each of the stages rather than actual having real dialogue and exposition and things. Maybe it's just that. But I find personally that I like some of the concepts of the story, but the execution usually falls flat. And so I kind of put that in the middle. And I apologize to any Yoko Taro fans out there who are basically screaming at me that I'm insane and that the story is awesome, awesome, awesome. But, that's how this monster feels. So overall, when I really step back and take a look at SINoALICE, I find that it's okay. And yet somehow I'm still playing. Maybe that'll change tomorrow, and I have a feeling that once the Nier collab ends, my motivation might drop off, because right now I'm still motivated to try and earn up those Twilight Crystals to get those pulls, to get those limited time characters. You know how that goes. And I'm very, very happy that I got A2, which is the main one I wanted, but I'm also only one pull away from being able to buy another class of the shop if I don't manage to get it in that pool. So, but after that, I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. Ultimately, whether the game's mechanics are really good or not, objectively speaking, as long as we're having fun, isn't that what really matters? I think so. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Are you still playing? Do you think it's garbage? Do you think it's great? And also, if you like this video, be sure and give me a good big fat thumbs up and maybe even subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.